Toni. I'm good.
I'm doing well. It's so good to have you with us today to be in conversation. Before we start and get into what we're brought here today for, I definitely want to give you a kudo and affirmation for holding it down all Black History Month with these lives and conversations with young people and really like pulling that all through. Shout out to you. And if y'all haven't seen those conversations that GGE has hosted in February, it is now March, please check those out because it's always a good time to celebrate Black history and listen to Black young people. So, period. Check those out. But we are here. Sorry. Okay, cool. So we're here, of course. Welcome to State of Black Girls 2022. We are so happy that y'all are able to join us. You could be at any virtual event, any in-person event, but you chose to be here with GGE to talk about the state of Black girls and what is important and at stake for Black girls and gender expansive young people. So we are so happy to have you. I'm Toni Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of organizing at Girls for Gender Equity. Girls for Gender Equity is an intergenerational based organization in Brooklyn. We lead local, state, and federal policy and campaigns work. We do that through organizing, policy, and civic engagement. And we also do that through culture and narrative shift work with young people, cis, Black, trans girls, and gender expansive young people at the center because we believe they are the experts in their own lived experience. And they have the keys, y'all, to live self-determined lives. And we also believe that they know what's right for them, right? So we cannot continue to create policies, legislations, movements without young people at the forefront. So speaking about brilliant and movement changing and shaking young people, I am so happy to be joined today by a young person, a youth organizer on NABG. So I will pass her the mic to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Ponny. My pronouns are she, her. I am located in Minnesota, and I am a steering committee member of National Agenda for Black Girls. So the National Agenda for Black Girls is a national campaign that centers the experiences of cisgender and transgender Black girls and gender nonconforming Black youth. A National Agenda for Black Girls is a collaborative project started in 2019, bringing the needs of Black girls to the national stage and amplifying our voices.
Amazing. Okay, so y'all know we are here to talk about President Biden's State of the Union address. We're also here to discuss, of course, the historical nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And we are also here because we believe when we center the needs of Black girls and gender expansive folks, everyone benefits. So to that extent, Ponny, I would love to know what were your thoughts on President Biden's State of the Union and where do you think his messaging landed? What was missing? What did you appreciate? And what would you have liked to hear?
Yeah, I think I would say overall, I was a little disappointed, but not surprised. I think I'll start with the positives. I, being in early childhood policy work, I think I really appreciated him talking about, the efforts around making sure that preschools and early education programs and daycares are affordable for families across the US. So I really appreciated that and just uplifting that. I also understand the current climate and the time that we're in. So him kind of talking about, NATO and the efforts to support Ukraine and how we're all standing with Ukraine. I appreciated that as well. But overall, I would say that his speech lacked depth. And I think we have seen over time with our leaders who speak on select issues from a surface level, Black folks and other people of color are usually excluded from that general population. So when our leaders speak generally, they're actively choosing to exclude us. And that's kind of how I felt. That's what I kind of heard. We didn't really get to hear a lot, about how specific policies and issues would impact Black folks or what equitable, systems would be set up to ensure that, we when policies are crafted that we are included in that. So we didn't get to hear a lot about that. We didn't really get to hear about Black youth issues. We didn't really get to, it's like he chose to be politically correct and he chose to go the easy route. And within, white supremacy and systemic marginalization, the easy route is usually the route that says, let's just not talk about Black issues, right? Because it's going to ruffle feathers. It's going to make people feel a type of way. And so I think overall, that's just how I felt. I felt like it was very general on the surface. So many of the issues that, his administration have, they ran their campaign on, it wasn't brought up. And so I think that was my beef. I would have loved to hear more about the monumental nomination of the first Black woman and like public defender
Mhm.
to the Supreme Court. I would have loved to hear that about the equitable measures that will be taken in American Resource Plan to support communities of color who have disproportionately felt effects of our nation's economic strifes. So I would have loved to hear about, reproductive justice, like how is this administration going to protect reproductive rights? How is this administration going to protect LGBT people? And as a student, I would have loved to hear more about, them student loans, like what we doing about it. so those are some of the things I would have loved to heard, and I didn't hear it. So
Yeah, I think you hit everything out of the park. And I specifically, when you bring up that he didn't even mention the term Black or like Black people. And I think that's all we know that those are always intentional choices, right? And to give the first State of the Union address, but not address the Black community in America is also, it speaks for itself. So to that extent, we're talking about, so just to give a little bit of context to a National Agenda for Black Girls campaign has been ongoing and leading the movement work nationally to center Black girls in policy and culture shift since November 2019. GG is, however, a 20-year-old organization. Woo, woo. But during the 2020 presidential campaign, NABG sent candidate questionnaires to all the candidates who were then running for election, and Biden's team shared his responses to questions directly from young people across the country. Particularly, he shared responses around education justice, ending gender-based violence, and a host of other priorities for Black girls. In his plan, he named there's an estimated $23 billion funding gap between white, Black, and POC, people of color, school districts. He also promised to allocate more funding toward resources in predominantly Black schools and POC districts. Including getting more mental health workers, school counselors, social workers, and wellness practitioners. In his address this week, he committed to funding police. And we know that police are funneled through schools that directly serve Black and brown young people the most. How did this commitment to funding police land for you? And where would you like to see his administration spending their dollars? We always say, if you want to see what a politician cares about, follow the money. So what would you like to see the Biden administration spending their dollars on?
I would love to see funding allocated to, Black mental health, like a lot of the things that you talked about, like a lot of young Black people in schools are not being supported. There's the saying where it's white girls get therapy, Black girls get prison, they get put into the prison pipeline. And so I think about that, right? Like we have so many young people like being funneled into this pipeline. Black youth are 3 times more likely than their white peers to be, expelled from school, suspended, sent to juvenile detention centers. And I think about like that's what we could be utilizing that money for. We could be utilizing that money to divest away from, having police in schools, because we literally know statistically and what we see and experience that when there's when police are overpopulated in any area with Black youth, they're in danger. Like we are in danger. So I feel like that's where I would love to see that money go. I would say overall, I was really disappointed and frustrated with just kind of hearing that, especially again, right? We're going back to what he ran his campaign on, like the type of promises that he made, the type of conversations that he said, the type of performative support that he gave out to organizers across the country after the murder of George Floyd. And in like just the past like decade of a lot of our lives and a lot of our upbringing. And so to kind of see him like say that with such pride and vigor, it kind of felt like he was just kind of like, forget y'all, like, forget the promises that I made. Again, back to what I said of like playing nice and trying to, be politically correct. But again, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at that. But as an organizer coming from Minneapolis, coming from Minnesota, seeing all of the work that Minneapolis organizers across the metro have been doing to divest away from the police, to defund the police, seeing the countless Black people that are being murdered by the police just in my state alone, right? Like in the past 2 years, in my state alone, we have had national coverage on 4 like deaths, on 4 murders by police. Just a month ago, Amir Locke was murdered by the police. And so the fact that we know this, we see it, we live it, and the rest of the world is seeing it. And this is maybe, I don't want to say the first time in history, but a very like prevalent time in history where like the rest of the world is seeing this. Like we can't deny this. So to have our politicians then double down and say like, well, no, like we just have to give more funding. Like you're giving more funding, more resources, more power to a group, to an organization that is killing us. And like there has been zero efforts on really how do we like radically fix this? How do we stop this from happening? One death should have been enough. It should have been ended. Like we should have all of those people, the names that we call, the people that we call out, they should all be here. They should all be alive. So it's extremely frustrating as a young person, as an organizer, as somebody who's going to, you know, someday like have children and influence children. It's extremely frustrating to see that and to see that's his stance on it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that, Pony. A lot of things that are heavy for us to even talk about as a community. And I'm based in New York, which is home of the most funded police department in the country. I mean, and we also have systems in place here. We have a mayor that is committed to funding police, we have, and defunding schools, right? So there's no resources there as well. And earlier when you talked about the school to prison pipeline system and the direct impact it has on Black girls, there's also a term, I want to say coined by Dr. Monique Morris, the school to confinement pathways, right? So understanding that Black girls and gender expansive young people don't just get, you know, prison or juvie or juvenile hall and things like that. They also get trafficked, right? They also get put into the harm's way of gender-based violence and experiencing that, right? So just thinking about and also experiencing gender-based violence at the hands of school resource officers, at the hands of police, right? So thinking about and broadening the scope of the actual ways that police continue to harm Black girls and gender expansive young people. Speaking of education, so Black and POC young people who seek higher education have the highest rates of student loan debt. And we also know that Black women are currently, based on race and gender, the most educated and on track for the most associate and bachelor degrees earned in America. However, we still see inequities in earnings and opportunities. Forgiving student loan debt would close the wealth gap tremendously. And as you stated a bit earlier, during the State of the Union, President Biden did not address his campaign promises of canceling student loan debt. What would be your call to action for President Biden? And why is the call to cancel student loan debt urgent for Black girls?
My call would simply be Biden better have my money. Like, I mean, I don't know what more we have to say, you know, like, I just feel like we're having the same conversations over and over again. It's like,
I saw a meme, actually, not to cut you, but I saw a meme on Twitter that was like, you know, like the "We Did It" Joe with Vice President Kamala. And it was like, they asking about the loans, Joe. And it's just like, yeah.
It's like, just sign it. Like, just we'll deal with it later if they try to, you know, fight it, but just sign it. Like, what you mean? So that's my big thing. Like, just sign it, just run it up. And again, to your point of like, you ran a campaign on this, and I think it's really frustrating. And I'll backtrack and say, you know, the 2020 elections, it was a climb to get young people to vote. It was a lot of work to get, you know, this, like my generation, to get out there and actually vote. And I was somebody who was doing campaign organizing work. And the biggest issue was like, they were like, we don't trust politicians. Like, they don't do what they say. They don't support us. They don't have our backs. And it's really awful to see like that becoming a reality, for it to like truly be like, okay, like, here's this, you know, you said you do these things, you promised that, you know, you'd be different. And it's not different. It's not that. So my call to action is just like, get it signed. Like, I just feel like, to the point of saying, you know, Black women are one of the most educated groups, demographics in the country. like, why are we having this back and forth when it's something that will pay for itself? You know, like a lot of experts have talked about that, like to wipe student loan debt will pay for itself if that's the issues. If we're sitting here talking about like, oh, economic this and what about the economy? What about that? It'll literally pay for itself. If we're not here like struggling and stressing, trying to figure out, oh, where am I going to go get money to pay for my student loans? Maybe we want to buy homes. Maybe we want to settle down. Like,
Okay.
maybe we'd want to invest. Like, y'all be saying all this stuff to us, like, oh, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. No, we don't have the money to do that. Like, this life is expensive now, and there's so many little things that you can do to make it less expensive. And I feel like that's like one of the biggest things.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you brought up what brought Gen Z to the polls to vote in 2020 to begin with, right? And a lot of it was this promise of canceling student loan debt, right? Like student loan debt, specifically for Black and people of color across this country, is debilitating, and it stifles you and keeps you from doing so much and moving on and progressing in whatever which ways your trajectory of your life looks like. So I think that's also a really big piece of what was misleading, as you named, because that's what brought your generation out to the polls. And then I would also add here, as a community organizer, I often urge people to shift their thinking, right? So a lot of what we do as community organizers is build on radical imagination. So I always say I'm here because someone had a radical imagination that dreamt me up here, right? And I think when we talk about canceling student loan debt, for some reason, not for some reason, you know, capitalism, the structures that be cannot fathom that anything that levels the playing field even remotely, right? So even when we think about the piece that says, if we forgave student loan, it would close the wage gap, it would close the inequities that so many people are facing across this country. It's I don't know how to really put it, but it's something that they just refuse to do because that gap for them is really what's more important, right? Maintaining that there are the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately, Black girls and Black people across America have always fallen in the have-nots, right? But speaking about mental health earlier, we touched on this. We know that young women of color living in poverty receive mental health care at 1/3 the rate of their white counterparts. And the risk of death from pregnancy complications was nearly 3.5 times higher for Black women than white women. And this rate is consistently rising and climbing as the Black maternal mortality rate grows. Over the past few months, gender justice organizations across this country have focused on codifying VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, and passing WIPA, Women's Health Protection Act, which was actually recently not passed in Senate just about 2 days ago. How do you see reproductive justice and passing the Women's Health Protection Act creating, or better yet, how do you see reproductive justice, which involves safe, accessible abortions, education around sexual health, bodily autonomy, et cetera, as being pivotal to this administration? And what is at stake specifically for cis and trans Black girls with WIPA failing in the Senate and VAWA still not codified?
Yeah, I think the past 6 years has truly been very pivotal time for reproductive justice. I think for so many, including myself, the decision to vote for this administration was largely due to reproductive rights being under attack. After the actions of the Trump administration, you know, there were cuts to Title IX funding, the Kavanaugh nomination and hearing, the loss of RBG, which ushered in, you know, the rushed like nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to as a SCOTUS nominee. I feel like the past 10 years, Me Too has really like picked up. So like we were a part of that as well. And you know, we're seeing like Roe v. Wade like under attack. We're seeing abortion bans left and right getting picked up by different, you know, different states and different Republican legislators. And so I just feel like it's extremely pivotal to this administration because again, right, to talk about, you know, student loan was a big thing that was pushed and that was ran on. Protecting reproductive rights was also something that was pushed and ran on. And I just feel like instead of us just talking about how we're going to protect reproductive rights, we actually have to like be doing things. We have to like be out there, like showing up, supporting the organizations on the ground that have been doing this work, that have been, mobilizing folks and have been raising funds to support local clinics, have been getting young people like access to healthcare that they needed when they couldn't afford it. Like, we have to be supporting those orgs, but we also have to be like, the United States federal government sued Texas. You know what I mean? So like, it's like, if we can do that, like, I need to see that energy every time that, young people's reproductive rights are under attack, because that's their autonomy. And so I guess to ask like, what's at risk? Like, trans youth are being targeted by hateful legislation across the country. The life expectancy of Black trans women is about 35 years old. So like, these laws are not just risking, like how they'll navigate through the system, which is dire, but it's also literally risking their lives, because we already know there's just so much there's so much hate towards like that group. And so to have laws and legislators that are continuing to support that message, that are continuing to push that, that's putting their lives at risk. We talk about, like all young people, like our lives are at risk because our autonomy is at risk. And if our autonomy is at risk, that means our decisions are at risk. Our ability to protect ourselves and plan our futures and think of what we want and what we need, and be able to make decisions for our bodies, that's all at risk. And so therefore our literal lives are at risk. So I just feel like there's a lot at risk here. Like, human life is at risk. And so I feel like this, like I said, this administration needs to do way more than just talk about it, way more than just have moments where they say, yes, we're in support, or we understand. We need to see like rigorous actions. We need to see like actual like, policies being passed. And even if it has to be executive orders, like, we need to see that happening, because we can't just be fighting this fight all by ourselves or in our communities. And at the top, there's no support. And so I think that's kind of like some of the things I want to see. And that's like a big issue.
Right. And exactly what I hear you saying essentially is that cis and trans Black girls, gender expansive young people deserve that safe right to decide whatever it is that they do with their bodies, right? Free from patriarchy, sexism, transphobia, ableism, all the things that, is created to stifle us. And that continues to be a thread in our systems and infrastructure that we all live under. I can't remember what the year this was, but in the McGuire versus Riley case, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson argued on behalf of Massachusetts reproductive rights groups that the state law prohibiting anti-abortion protesters from harassing people seeking reproductive health care should be upheld, right? And discussing reproductive justice rights, safe and legal access to abortion resources, bodily autonomy, all those things and moving pieces. Last week, we also saw for the first time in her story, President Biden nominated, he did keep one promise. President Biden nominated a Black woman to be the next Supreme Court Justice, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. How important is it to you to have a Black woman sitting on the highest bench in the highest court in our country?
I'm super just excited. I think I'm definitely even more excited because of just what we talked about, like protecting reproductive rights. That was something that, like, looking at her track record and her history, which I got to do through GGE. I was like, okay, like I'm definitely in support of this. I would love to see it happen, but also like not to. I don't like to, just say, what is it like? Visibility, or like having folks that look like me. Representation, yeah. I don't just like to be like representation matters, because we've also seen how representation is weaponized against us. So that wasn't just it for me, but it was truly to have like someone who has defended, people, who has stood and supported, reproductive rights, and judged in favor of reproductive rights. I felt safe in that place. And again, like it's great, sometimes to see like a Black woman, see somebody that looks like you. I don't know Justice Jackson personally, but in my heart and my mind, I'm like, okay, yes, we have an auntie on the bench. Like, we got.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, she's not a justice just yet, right? So we're hoping that even her journey to becoming a justice after this nomination is also equitable, right? And free from sexism and misogyny. and misogynoir, racism, all those things. But yeah, I really resonate with you feeling that, you know, sometimes representation isn't enough. Well, all the time representation isn't just enough, but that the person who is representing the group of people or whoever has to have, you know, the politics in line. And I agree with you. I feel safe in what we've seen her present in her history and her resume, that she is the perfect fit for this job. And she's more than qualified, right? When we talk about being qualified, I feel like Black women and Black girls are always, you know, we always shoot to be, we're aimed to be like over qualified for things because we know how hard and challenging it is to meet those markers and have those goalposts consistently move further and further from you. So speaking of policy and federal, specifically federal policy, Girls for Gender Equity's campaign, A National Agenda for Black Girls, is currently joining Representative Kelly and Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman in their fight to pass the Protect Black Women and Girls Act, which calls for civil rights protections for Black women and girls. In this organizing effort, NABG youth organizers are adding their voice and demands to the bill and amplifying the needs of Black girls around this country. How important is it for us to sign this bill into law and for Black girls to have this specific federal protection?
Yeah, well, having the opportunity to work closely with this bill through redlining efforts, I feel like it's extremely important. I've looked through this bill up, down, center, and we, like folks at GGE, have suggested ways to make it better and, you know, more inclusive and, you know, hitting on more intersectional like issues that Black girls and women and gender nonconforming folks experience in the US. And so I feel really confident about this bill. It touches on so many different things, and that's why it's important. You know, it talks about, you know, immigration like rights. It talks about, you know, protection for Black women and girls, young Black women and girls, like their experiences in their education and school, their healthcare experiences. So I just feel like all of the different things that we have kind of talked about today and the issues, like this bill is literally trying to solve those problems. And so I think that any one of any leader that, you know, we're going to look to, like, you know, like either run our states or our cities or whatever, I think they should all be on this, and they should all be looking at this bill and supporting this bill. And we should be talking about this and pushing this. Black women, as we know, are harmed and they go missing and people don't look for them. And when we're murdered, we don't get the same, you know, like recognition or conversation as, you know, white or non-Black women do, or even people in general, you know, even comparing us to, like, you know, when Black men get harmed and what that looks like. And also to talk about, you know, like Black LGBT youth, this bill also spotlights them as well. Like there is a lot of like violence that happens to that community that needs to stop, that we need to start talking about and centering and uplifting and figuring out how we can, you know, give supports and funding to those different things. So I feel like that's why this bill is super important. I've been really grateful to be so close to it and like look at it and make my edits. And one day I want to say, yes, like we did that. And that takes all of us collectively to, you know, get that over the line.
Thank you, Pony. You that girl. But speaking, we touched earlier on mental health briefly, but I would love for us to like dig into that a little bit more and like healthcare. So studies have shown that Black women, no matter our education status or income, face higher rates of medical racism, whether it's being covered by insurance, lack of insurance, racism, sexism, transphobia, medical professionals, etc. During Biden's campaign, he made a promise through our NABG candidate questionnaire to Black girls and gender expansive young people to build a healthcare system where we no longer have 3 million uninsured Black Americans, where Black folks would be given a better chance at healthcare. What do you still see as a major barrier to Black young people receiving adequate healthcare?
Yeah, I would say healthcare is unaffordable. Healthcare is inaccessible. It's non-accessible. Even like myself, you know, like when I was like trying to figure out the whole healthcare thing, I was like, okay, like being an adult now, having to put your like adult cap on, I'm like, how do I apply for health insurance? What does this mean? How much am I gonna have to pay? Like, there's so many different things that are just not explained to us that we're just not, you know, allowed access to. And so I feel like that's a big issue. And I think overall it's systemic violence, right? Like it's literally like choosing, like some of the things that we've talked about earlier. It's knowing that here is an easy solution to ensure that everyone, because when we start with Black women, when we start with Black folks and we work our way up, like everybody else gets protected. Like if we ensure that every Black girl in the US has health insurance that is free and affordable, like we know that everybody else will have the same access to things. And so there's this easy route where we could just wave a magic wand and make that happen. But for some reason, we're all racking our brains like, why can't we do that? And that goes back to capitalism, right? That goes back to white supremacy. That goes back to this dominance thing of like, who's on the bottom? Who are we okay with literally dying? Who are we fine with having erased? Like, who do we not care if they get adequate care? Yeah. And even when we do get, you know, like adequate care, or even when we do have access to health insurance, now we're talking about like the whole, you know, medical system, like we're talking about racial bias within our health system, our healthcare system, like who is being adequately cared for, like how are we being overlooked, are we being told, you know, get out of here, especially like thinking about, you know, trans Black youth, and also thinking about like fat Black people. Like there's a lot of like phobia around bigger Black people and completely excluding them in these spaces, and talking about like how can we adequately actually serve them and support them. And so I think there's just so much. It's a like we're talking about, it's systemic violence, right? It's a system of racism that even when we peel back one layer, we got to be ready to start fixing the other layers. And I feel like for so long, our policies and our politicians, and they have to take fault on this, have kind of just been stuck in this one place by choice, in my opinion. I feel like it's by choice, because if our communities can move mountains to make sure that we have housing, to make sure that we're fed, to make sure that we're safe, why can our politicians, when they have so much more resources and access, to make it happen for us? So I just feel like by choice, we've been stuck in this place where we're solely imagining, how do we ensure that people can at least survive? We're not even talking about thriving. We're not even talking about what happens when all Black girls get health insurance now. Where are the clinics? Where are you finna go? Do you have a doctor that understands you, that looks like you, that like has a similar,
you don't have to travel like an hour and a half to get to, right?
Exactly.
Talking about the importance of Black girls' time, right? And like, what does that even translate to? That's also important. And while you were talking, I remember in the State of the Union, President Biden brought up that he was working with pharmacy companies to cut the cost of pharmaceuticals, right? And I was like, okay, well, that's something I can appreciate, because now as a Black girl who lives with her Black mom, right? My mom is retired, and seeing, you know, what it looks like for someone to collect, you know, Social Security disability, which is not much at all, cannot put any food or pay any light bills, right? So being able to see that firsthand now, and also even something about, you brought up that phobia and insurance, right? And the way that Black folks have to navigate that. I remember like recently being on the call with her insurance company and asking them, well, why did her, you know, her pays go up, her co-pays go up? Like, what's that about? And then basically sharing that, well, she did a physical recently and she gained weight. So we charge more when you're bigger, right? So even thinking about the ways that Black folks specifically are continued to be like predisposed to conditions, and inherently how the system works to keep you in poverty, right? To keep you unwell, right? Yeah. Because you don't deserve health, you don't deserve wellness. And your wellness should be extremely tied to what value you had put out into the world, and how much money did you accrue, and all the things of that nature. So thank you for highlighting that. I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to add, like, even to your point of like having to support your like mom through that, right? Like that's also talking about just inaccessibility. Like I think about having like growing up immigrant and having an immigrant mom, and how many times I had to pull up, get on the phone with, you know, being able to code switch, being able to be like, hi, yeah, you're not gonna play her. And I know
you're not gonna play her.
Because what do you mean? Like, and so it's so much that we're constantly dealing with and constantly battling that could just, you know, be solved, honestly, in my opinion, so easily. And, you know, call me an optimist, call me wrong, but I just feel like this is not rocket science that we're doing. This is just like, make it happen.
Yeah. It all boils back down to, for me, belief, right? Like how, even we're talking about like abolition and things like things of that nature, right? All it takes is for enough people to believe that this thing should be this way, or that this is the just and this is the right way for something to be put into place, right? So a lot about organizing is being able to shift the hearts and minds of people so that their beliefs change, right? And thank you for even highlighting earlier being the daughter of an immigrant. I'm also daughter of an immigrant. First generation, whoop, whoop. Speaking of Black immigrants, so Black immigrants make up 7% of the undocumented population, but 20% of deportations, right? And we consistently see the ways that Black migrants are treated specifically here in America. In what ways can this administration support and protect Black migrants?
My first thing that I'll say is completely halt ICE deportations. I don't see a reason for it. I don't see a purpose. As somebody who had a parents detained by ICE, I'm very much against ICE deportations. I feel like they're separating families. And even when people talk about, okay, well, like, what did you do to get put in this situation or X, Y, and Z? As somebody who like experienced this, I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I have a white friend whose dad has the same exact, situation as my dad, but he's not being ripped away from his family today. Like, in fact, he's still got his practice. He's still doing his thing. He's still minding his business. So like, it should never be that. That should never be the solution. So that's my first thing. But also, it's like, offer support to Black migrants in the same way that they have shown right now in this recent moment that they are able and willing to offer support to white migrants. They're able to see white folks in a different lens. They're able to see, like, with the whole situation that's been happening, the war in Ukraine, as much as like across the board, it's feeling sorrow for everybody that's experiencing imperialism, everybody that's experiencing war, but also like to calling out the fact that so many of our countries have been experiencing imperialism. So many of our people have experienced war, like I grew up with a mother who went through a civil war. Like, so many of people from countries of color, like people of color, have experienced war, know what it is to have their countries torn apart, know what it is to have their economy corrupted and destroyed. And that's why they flee. And so now it's all of a sudden like, we have this understanding for like supporting migrants. We have this understanding for like supporting, people fleeing from a war-torn country, because it's under a white gaze. It's happening to white people. And we're seeing so many messages in the media that's confirming that like they're saying this, they're not even hiding anymore. They're saying it with their chests. Like, yeah, if y'all was white, if y'all was Christian, y'all could come into our countries. If y'all can speak English, y'all can come into our countries. And if you're not that, we don't want you here. So now we know it isn't about, economy. It isn't about all the other things that they were lying about and saying like, oh, it's this, it's that, it's that. It's not racism. It's just this, is that. It's literally just that you don't see people of color, specifically Black people, as deserving of protection, as deserving of, human rights. Like, you don't see that. And so I just feel like that's bare minimum. That's really what can start happening. Just treat us with dignity, with respect, with human rights. Because back to my point, I hate to quantify human beings. I hate to make everything that we do about a dollar amount, but sometimes that's how they speak. They only speak in dollars. And to prove our point, America wouldn't be America without immigrants. America wouldn't be America without Black immigrants. America wouldn't be America without Latinx immigrants. And so to think that these groups are always targeted the most and shown so much hatred is it's really hurtful. And so that's kind of like my thoughts on that.
Yeah. As you were talking, it reminded me of back in September, I believe it was around September, when Vice President Kamala Harris, she essentially told the Haitian refugees, I think she was like, do not come here. And I remember when I first saw the clip, I just felt it felt like someone had, like someone like juked you a little bit in your chest. Like, that's how it felt for me. Because we should live under administrations and governments and systems that believe in Black girls deserving to be free from the fear of family separation through deportation, and having those full access to basic human rights. So thank you for sharing. That's the end of our conversation piece, but I would love for us to move into the Black Girl Bill of Rights. The Black Girl Bill of Rights, which is one of NABG, a National Center for Black Girls policy platforms nationally, So we understand that the United States Bill of Rights, correct, is supposed to protect or be the Declaration of Freedom and Humanity and protection for all people, right? But we specifically know that those protections and freedoms are not given to everyone. We just had a full conversation about the ways that Black people, people of color, AAPI folks across the board and different experiences and identities are not protected under the Bill of Rights. So in 2016, at the Black Girl Movement Conference, Black girls gathered from across the US to imagine a world that values Black girls and girls of color and contributed the ideas of what this specific Black Girl Bill of Rights looks like. So I'm gonna read a little bit of it, and then we'll go into Pony, who will share some brilliant and beautiful affirmations for Black young people across the country who may have felt not seen or invisible during the State of the Union given by President Biden. So every Black girl deserves the right to education and information about African and Black history, the right to express our Blackness however we define it without judgment, the right to be safe and have our physical, emotional, and mental health honored, protected, and nurtured, the right to real and adequate sex education, contraceptives, tampons, and pads, the right to agency and control over our own bodies in every space, the right to justice and reparations in response to harm and sexual assault when police officers murder Black folks and people of color, the right to play and have fun, the right to community, sisterhood, and support from other young people, the right to be exactly who we are, free from stereotypes and insecurity, our full, unique selves.
Thank you so much, Toni, for saying that. So I just want to affirm every Black person, especially Black youth out there, women, Black girls, women, and gender nonconforming folks who may have watched the president's speech the other night and you didn't see yourself represented. I would just like to say that although our leaders have rarely ever supported us or rarely ever stood for us, that one of the most amazing parts about being Black is coming from a community that loves and perseveres regardless of who's in power. I want you to always hone into that. I want you to always stay connected to your communities, to your families, to your network of friends, to those you haven't even met yet that love you, that hold you up. I know that constantly in the past couple of years in the media, we've seen Black folks come together to mourn Black death, but I also want you to remember and keep in mind that we're mourning because that's how much we love each other. We hold a network of love and warmth and joy, and that's all that we deserve. As a young Black person out there, you deserve that. You deserve happiness. You deserve bliss. You deserve to be thriving out here, not always in survival mode. And I'm deeply sorry that that's how our society is, that that's how this system is, that it persists, that it continues to hold us down. But please remember deep in your heart and amongst those that love you, that you are upheld, you are uplifted, you are supported. We want to see you out here laughing, having a great time, living, thriving. And we thank you so very much for being out there in your communities and supporting your communities and holding it down, even when our political leaders are not doing that work, because we know that we support us, that we take care of us, that we make sure things happen for us. And so I just want you all to continue like holding on to that and believing that messages as you continue your work. Please center rest, please center self-care. And yeah, you are loved.
Thank you, Pony. I felt that in my shando, y'all. I felt that in my heart. I also want to take some time to direct folks who are watching us now on IG Live. You might see a pin at the bottom of your IG Live screen. That pin is to directly connect you to signing our every action. So if you are someone who has, joined our IG Live today and you felt moved, you've felt that you are down to support and center the voices of Black girls and gender expansive young people, you believe in the Black Girl Bill of Rights, please sign in this every action and show us your support in that way. And thank you. I just want to say thank you, Pony, for having this conversation with us today, for sharing your brilliance with the world. Young people are, of course, y'all know what y'all need. Y'all are like the key to liberation. So I thank you for being here. And I think as we wind on this hour, that's all we got for y'all.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Want to say? No, we done? Okay. Bye, y'all. Have a great weekend.